Good morning, my lovelies. Happy Wednesday. Happy scoping out. Do you ever have that thing happen when you're like, I'm just fine, and then some old issue comes up, some daddy issue, which was my case. I'll tell you my story in a minute. Or some grief wells up, and you're like, what the hell? I thought I dealt with this already. I could have sworn this was done already. What is going on? I wanted to talk about that today because this happened to me just Monday, just the day before yesterday. And I had that same response I always have when something like this comes up. What the hell? Where'd this come from? I was at a friend's house who they were babysitting their grandchild, and the grandfather was on the floor with the grandbaby, and she's so enamored of him. He sits down with her and she lights up and she smacks at stuff. She's just amazing and just delights in his presence. And I was all aglow. I was feeling all warm and fuzzy and lovey-dovey about this moment. I felt like a voyeur a little bit watching this happen. And was so beautiful. And then out of nowhere, I was gobsmacked by the realization that I never had that. I never had that with a dad, never had that with a grandfather, never had that with an uncle. I never had that with a man that has stuck around. And all of a sudden, out of this glorious, whole, beautiful, loving moment, I was just like, I felt like somebody had punched a hole right through my chest. It was so painful. And I'm like, what the hell? I've dealt with my daddy issues. What the hell's going on here? And then later the same day, I had a whole different scenario happen where an issue that I've never had. It is the most subtle but brutal insecurity a person can have. Popped up. Never had it. Never dealt with this one before. So I thought, we have got to talk about this. We have got to talk about what happens when the next layer of something comes up, because this is normal. It happens to everybody. If you've been coming to these for a while, you know that I've talked about healing happening on a spiral, right? We tend to think of it as being linear, that it just goes straight up. And if you just walk through the steps of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, acceptance. If you just walk through those, boop, 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 you're going to climb up there and you're going to be fine. And I'm here to tell you that's not the way it happens. First of all, they're not linear. They're very convoluted. And second of all, they happen on a spiral, which means, if this leg of the spiral every time I come around and I hit this leg of the spiral, say that, this is that issue, that daddy issue or whatever. Every time I hit it, I'm higher up on the spiral. I have made progress. Every time I come back to it, it doesn't mean I'm beginning again. And that is the most important thing I want you to take away from this. When you are blindsided by the work that you have left to do, or work that you thought you dealt with and it should be behind you, and why do I have to face this again? Remember, you're facing it differently. You've matured, you've grown, your life circumstances have changed, your coping mechanisms have developed, and you've got wisdom now, you've got life experience now. So you're higher up on that spiral. It is not the same thing. So I want you to understand that not only is it normal, but it's actually a sign of progress when that stuff comes up for you. I really did some soul searching on this, and for me, what came at the very next stage for me, as I was looking at this, I think for years and years as a coping mechanism, I was in denial that I didn't have this life experience, right? And then I hit anger, and anger was, it can be really obvious, like, God damn it, why didn't dad stick around? Why is my grandfather a horrible person? Why, you gotta go through these things. It was just flat out anger. But let me tell you, most of the time, anger is a cover emotion. Anger covers fear, frustration, confusion, abandonment, betrayal. Anger covers all of these other nuanced stages. And when I really started looking at this, okay, so do I still have issues around not having that influence steadily in my life? Is that still a pain point? I had to look at all of these layers and where have I dealt with them? And I looked at that anger side, right? And everything that covers up, all of the confusion, all of the betrayal, all of the hurt, the fear. And I realized that I went through all of those phases. I went through all of those nuances, and it took years. I'm 44 years old. Like, this is not something that happened overnight for me. And every time I came up against it, I made a different choice. Every time I came up against it, I made a different step forward. And in that bargaining phase, remember, we tend to think of it, if I had only done this differently, they'd still be alive. If I had only done this differently, they'd still be with me. Bargaining is subtle too. Bargaining can be, well, if I just do this, I won't miss a father, right? If I just work my ass off. Hi. If I just work my ass off, then I can ignore the fact that I don't have this hole in my life, right? If I just bury myself in non-committed relationships and just go out and have fun, I'll never be attached and I'll never feel abandoned, right? There's this bargaining that says, if I can manhandle my life to make it look a certain way, then I won't feel what I feel. I won't experience this pain. I won't have this loss, right? It's a false sense of control. It absolutely is uncategorically false. First of all, we have no control over anything anyway. We barely have control over our own thoughts and our own process, which is why I do these, so we can get some tools and get some control there. But the idea that we can bargain away our life experience is ridiculous. Look, wisdom is not knowledge. It can't be learned. Wisdom can only be gained. It can only be experienced. And if we're going to allow ourselves to grow and become wise, we must allow in our life experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when you have one of these things come up and it just smacks you across the face, the best thing you can do is surrender to that. Look for where you've done your work. Where are you on that spiral? And what's next for you? And what came up for me personally, as I could go back and I could deconstruct where I'd gotten through and done all of this work, I could see that I was actually at the sadness phase, and that's okay. Guess what's next? Acceptance. So it's perfectly normal. And I get to look at this through a completely different lens. Rather than beating myself up and going, God, Triffany, how is it you're here again? You're a freaking life coach. Get over it, right? I could berate myself all day. And all that's going to do is create this resistance. And what we resist persists. It's going to keep all that grief in place. It's going to keep me in the denial phase way back earlier on, right? Do not want to be dealing with that. It's going to keep me in a place where I start to get bitter and create a story around men, all men, right? Then that is only going to become hurtful. So the best thing we can do for ourselves is allow ourselves to surrender into the experience. Surrender into the opportunity to gain wisdom. Not about his motivations or what happened. I'll never know that. Wisdom about myself, experience about myself, understanding what I'm bringing to the table or not if I haven't totally healed. Recognizing that I'm ever evolving. There is no landing point. Don't I wish there was? Don't I wish there was a landing point we could just dial it in and go, yep, now I'm successful and I'm successful forever. I'm healed and I'm healed forever. I love you, but that is just not an option. So what do you do when these things come up? Let's go back through and we'll deconstruct it, okay? First thing is you recognize it's normal. This is a process that everybody goes through, so there's no reason to judge yourself. Second thing, it's a sign of progress. So you accept it, you surrender to it, you allow this life experience to unfold in front of you. And the moment you can accept it is the moment you can inspect it. See where you've done your work. Congratulate yourself. I am damn proud of myself for dealing with this stuff. And if you are curious about what happened with my father, who's a murderer, I've got an article on my blog. You can go look it up. There was a lot of work that went into forgiving. There was a lot of work that went into that. And every time now when this stuff comes up for me, I get to look at the work I did. I get to look at how far I've come. Isn't that fantastic? It's a whole different perspective than the self-flagellation that we do normally, right? So you accept that it's normal, you allow that experience in, you go back, you deconstruct, and you celebrate what you've done well. Because once you can look at what you've done well, now you know what your toolkit is. Now you know what you're already good at. Mine's forgiveness. It's my superpower. I get to tap into that every single time I feel wronged or hurt or in pain about something. And the only way I remind myself of that is when I go back through and go, what have I done before to heal from this? What have I done that has worked in the past? Right? And then the last thing that you can do is seek some freaking help. We read a lot of self-help books. Make sure you've got a circle of friends that you can have these tough conversations with, that you can admit that you were just sucker punched. You just had a hole ripped out of your heart by something that should have been lovely and gorgeous and beautiful, right? Surround yourself with people that you can really get vulnerable with and who can get vulnerable with you. and that you can process these things, and who can remind you what you've done before. And if you don't have those people in your life, or you want somebody more objective, life coach, a therapist, clergy that you trust, somebody. We are out here. This is what we do. We're out here in service to help people do exactly this. And we're not doing it because we're up on some pedestal and we have everything figured out. We're doing it because we know that this stuff, we use these tools. We're doing it because we are human. We're doing it because we are part of this experience with you. We're all in this together. So if you can remember that, you can grab onto that and have faith that this is all serving you and that there is light at the other side of this. Feel better? I do. Oh, and then my other one was the whole brand new one. I'm starting, this is a whole new issue for me that I'm just going to start from scratch. Okay, apparently I was in denial for 44 years of whatever this was. Okay, so what's next? Anger. If I know that ahead of time, I get to understand the times that I get confused or disappointed or sad or whatever, that I understand that's part of the process, right? Now I get to sort of preemptively prepare myself for what that's going to look like, rather than be afraid of it or try to hide it or bury it down any further than I already have. So there we have it. Give yourselves a giant hug from me. Remember to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of these. Come live Wednesdays at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Time. Thank you, Stephanie, for being here. I'm so glad you're here. And give yourselves a great big hug from me, and I will see you next time. Bye, my lovelies. Ooh, that stuff can sneak up on you.